Welcome to Live Sense8. I'm Sheila Applegate.
And I'm Zac Hansen.
And a special shout out to Justin Applegate for the composition of the Live Sense8 podcast music. In this podcast, we dive deep into the concepts of consciousness and other interesting trivia in the Netflix original series Sense8. We're doing an episode-by-episode exploration of how we can live a Sense8 life. And we're also talking with cast and crew and team members of Sense8 to hear the experience from their perspective.
Enjoy the show. This episode is brought to you by Tracy Wright, conscious parenting and living coach. She's shining clarity with compassion and understanding. You can find out more about her on consciouslyawesome.com. We also have Marisa Dranchak, conscious life coach. Discover how vibrant life can be. You can find out more about Marisa at myconsciouslifecoach.com. And Divine Phoenix Books. Books with a purpose for a positive change. Check out Divine Phoenix Books at divinephoenixbooks.com.
In today's What's Going On segment, we have two very special visitors back with us. Maximilienne Ewalt, who you know as Grace, Neet's mom in Sense8, and Deirdre Weinberg, who is the artist who will be painting the mural in San Francisco. So you probably have already heard about the San Francisco Sense8 Mural Project that Maximilienne has been helping to spearhead. The crowdfunding is about midway through right now, and we need to really pick up attention, get the word out there, and just have everybody donate. No matter what you can do, whether it's $1, $5, or $1,000, you want to be able to give it to them and let this first mural start the worldwide mural project for Sense8. Welcome, Deirdre and Maximilienne. We're really glad to have you back here today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So you've been working very hard. I've noticed you all over the social media, really working at getting the message out to people. So first of all, before we get started, I just want to give you both a huge thank you from the deepest part of my heart, because I know how diligently and how much time and energy you've been spending on this, and I think it's really beautiful. And Maximilienne, we just saw your article come out, and we're going to talk to you about that in a little bit. But Deirdre, we'd love to hear more about the image. I know there's a video out now where you talk a little bit about the image idea for the mural and why you have chosen it. But can you just go into some detail here today?
Sure. So the idea was to have Shiva, the creator and protector of the universe, stand in for the Sense8 characters. So in other words, they are in the image of Shiva with 8 heads and 16 arms, showing all of the faces of the characters.
Nice.
This is set against a circular background with all of the 8 skylines of the cities that are shown in the series. And that entire image is set within a face. And on the side of the image, the words, "I am not just a me, I am also a we," appear, making it clear what this message is all about.
That's really beautiful, and I love the idea of them coming together as Shiva. And I read once somebody said that it's like the cluster is one being or with 8 branches, and I think that you're feeling that same thing. They're one unit and they're individuals within it. And I love also the energy of Shiva and the protection of the world and the power that not only this series but the representation through the cluster is bringing to everyone. I think it's just very beautiful. And the other message from Sense8 is I see you. I think there's one thing that people have really said is that they feel seen. So having you choose to depict this in the brightness of the eye and then the shadow self in the background is just it's an incredible depiction. So I want to thank you and honor you for coming up with that. Can you talk a little bit about how that inspiration came to be? Like, did you see it immediately? Did it develop for you over time?
No, it actually just popped into my mind when we started talking about the idea of the mural and the purpose. I don't know. It's just kind of a gift. Sometimes things just come to you, and sometimes you have to work and you still don't get it. This just came to me, and I also wanted to point out that in the front, Lana is the first character of the Shiva because because this mural's starting in San Francisco. We thought it would be appropriate to have her.
Nomi is the first person?
I'm sorry, Nomi.
Yeah.
Sorry. And anyway, she's holding the 8 as in Sense8, and initially in the first rendition of the eye, I had the 8 horizontally because I realized that the 8 in that position is in the infinity symbol.
Oh, nice.
And I wanted to use that, but then we realized it doesn't look that good. It could be improved by holding it vertically, but in the second depiction, the second rendition, it's tilted so that, it's halfway there. It's both the 8 and semi-infinity.
I think that's perfect because I think that it's meant to be both, Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's possible to put in both somewhere, like the 8 and then the infinity, like Sense8 forever, somewhere, somehow. And I just wanted to say something about the image. I find it really powerful because I love the face in shadow. It's a trick of the eye, like Sense8 is. It's very Sense8. It's like you don't know what's going on right away.
Right.
And you see this face in shadow, kind of stark and lonely, kind of. There's a feeling of loneliness. And then in the eye is life and joy and unity to diversity together. It can lift the face, lift the soul out of this isolation. That's what I love about it.
Yeah, and as you're saying that, I get just this deep feeling in my heart because this is meant to invoke and to bring that message to people who didn't ever experience Sense8 before. So that experience of just looking at the mural gives them a fractal of the experience of what it is to watch the series, which is really beautiful.
So thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you, Deirdre.
Yeah, and it sounds like divine inspiration for me. That's what I call it when, it comes from beyond us and it just is in our impression right away.
Yeah, I agree with that. Maybe it's a sign.
Yeah, I think so.
Speaking of divine inspiration, there's been things like that all along the way, all along this journey, from finding the wall, finding Deirdre, who was willing to do the mural, to the 4 non-blondes, rehearsing at Lennon's studio.
Right.
These were all things that just kind of was like a red carpet being rolled out by the universe saying, come this way.
That's great. And now I really do believe I'm holding the space and have complete faith that we are going to reach the goal and that this is going to come to be. And that it's just the beginning of many murals around the world.
Right. And I would like to talk a little bit about the fundraising and where we are. Deadline for the fundraiser, the 16th. Mm-hmm. So we can collect money up to the 16th.
Up to the 16th.
So we're about halfway there, but we are not there in the funding. We need to, if we're at halfway in the funding, we should be at 7,500. We're at 5,594 right now, 37% funded with 101 backers.
Beautiful.
So we're actually behind right now. We're all working really hard to reach out to more, and I posted something yesterday on Twitter, actually on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, about how I think it's 1,900 and something people, and there are way more than that on fan groups. Spend $5, we would be there.
Mm-hmm. So since we know not everybody's going to do that, let's all go for as much as we possibly can. So everyone that can do at least $5, even if you think your $5 or your $1 isn't going to help, your energy of doing it will help. And if you can push yourself and donate a little bit more, the money doesn't come out of your account until the 16th of July when we meet the goal at that date. So go ahead and use the power of manifestation, claim your donation, and then go create that for yourself, because the universe responds. And if you believe in it and you work towards it, I think that we can all come together and offer that donation. And it would be fun to hear the miracles of people who say, I'm going to donate, and then let the universe bring that towards them. So that's one thing you can do, is donate. But Maximilienne and Deirdre, one of the other things I think that we really want to ask people here today is to not just promote it. Yes, tweeting it, retweeting it, putting it on social media. And anytime you do that, we are so grateful for you. But I'd like to take that up a notch and ask everyone to write to 5 people personally that you think might donate. And even if they would do it for a gift to you, someone who you know would want to do something nice for you, or if it's somebody that you know that loves Sense8 or you think would love Sense8, just reach out. If everybody reaches out to 5 people personally, I think that we can reach this goal as well.
Well said, well said. And I also want to add that there are many fans out there who are participating by selling their products, like Heather, who does these beautiful Sense8 rainbow pins.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And she sells them for $10, and out of each pin, $5 is going to our project. So half the proceeds are going to our project. There's somebody selling I Am Also We T-shirts, the ones that Miguel wore in Brazil.
Awesome.
And he's also donating proceeds. And there's other people out there doing the same. I can send you that information.
Absolutely. We'll keep that. That will be in the post. We'll give everybody the links for those things, as well as the link to donate to the fundraiser. Yeah. Give a shout out to that link right now. We're going to keep talking for a minute, but give a shout out and tell everyone how to donate right now, and then we'll do it again at the end.
You can just go straight to Kickstarter.com and type in the search bar, I Am Also a We. That is the title of the mural. In the Kickstarter page, our social media contacts.
Great. So donating, going right to the Kickstarter page, putting your donation in, and then finding all those links and going and tell everyone on those links that you just donated. There's your assignment.
But if you go to Kickstarter, type in I Am Also We.
All right. So before we go, I do want to hear a little bit. You two went to Pride in San Francisco. We all know that there's some really profound Pride scenes in San Francisco in the Sense8 series, and we've seen pictures of you out at Pride spreading the Sense8 mural news. Can you give us a couple little stories about how that went for you and some of the experiences that you had?
Fantastic, I thought. Yeah, it was a great experience.
Yeah, it was really fun. Deirdre she enlarged the picture of our mural, and we put it on a poster and carried it around, and that drew attention to it, and people recognized it, and then they recognized me, and they were so adorable, as they always are. And let's see, it was just amazing. And for me, going on the way home on Muni, it's our buses, all along the way, I ran into Sense8 fans who just were fantastic. And one of them gave a very huge donation to our project. So that was wonderful. He was wonderful. So I do want to say also, I was working so hard. There was a speaker on the stage, all these different speakers, and I thought, if I could get up there and announce it. But that did not happen. They had their schedule, and I tried. Video there of a young man with long hair who I think gave a really wonderful talk about Sense8.
Great. So we'll have that link of that video on the page for you to look at as well. Maximilienne and Deirdre, thank you so much for being here. And I have to go now. We're going to be talking to your sweetie, Maximilienne.
I know.
Evangelical James is up next. And we're excited about that. And it's like two ships crossing in the night here. So
Sense8 promoter.
He is the Sense8 promoter. So thank you, Maximilienne. One more time, we want everyone to go to Kickstarter.com, search I Am Also a We, find the Mural Project there, and explore all the things that Maximilienne and Deirdre have shared there. Then make your donation. Share it out on all the social medias, which you will find on Kickstarter on that page. And then pick out 5 people that you imagine wanting to donate and go send them a personal message and a request to support this project, because this is epic. And before we go, Maximilienne, you have one more shout out. I do know that you have another member of your team. We just want to give her a thank you.
Thank you for that. Her name is Susanna Grillo. I introduced her to the fandom on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So she is out there interacting with people, and you can contact her. Please, I also want to ask people, submit questions if you have any questions about the mural. I know that people are eager to see the close-up of the eye, and Deirdre is working on that. It's a work in progress. The magic happens on the wall. The magic is in the process.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Maximilienne and Deirdre. We are so glad you came. Thank you to everyone listening. Stay tuned as we go talk to James, the evangelist of Sense8.
Thank you, Sheila and Zac.
You know Sense8 evangelist James from our Chicago adventures. If you recall, James is Maximilienne Ewalt's partner. Maximilienne is Amanita's mom, Grace, on Sense8. James is joining us today to share his reflections of what it feels like to be welcomed into the Sense8 family and the impact this has had on both him and his art. James Motlow lived in Locke, California throughout the 1970s. During that time, he produced a body of photographic images of cafes, late-night donut holes, Sacramento Delta farmers and farm workers, Sacramento neighborhoods, lowriders, and his neighbors in Locke. These images have been published locally, nationally, and internationally. His stock images have been sold on Magnum in New York and Jeroboam in San Francisco. He has images in the collection of the Oakland Museum, Crocker Museum, as well as many private collections. After 30 years in San Francisco Bay Area, he returned to Locke, where he lives now. Welcome, James.
James, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, Zac. Thank you, Sheila. It's an absolute delight to be here with you two lovely, magnificent people that I love dearly.
Oh,
thank you.
Well, we feel the same way.
Exactly. Ditto.
Getting some feelings of being out on that deck, having coffee. It feels great.
An epic conversation and adventures.
Truly. It was a fortunate, grand time. And what, it lives on.
Absolutely.
In my memory.
Yeah. Well, let's start there and maybe share a little bit about what it was like, because coming to San Francisco from San Francisco to Chicago, we shared on our episode a little bit about our experience hanging out with you, but you had a whole nother experience having it be, I believe, the first time that you met Lana and Karen and were welcomed into the cast family. And so tell us about that magical moment.
Well, the Chicago trip, actually, you started off with going from San Francisco to Chicago. Actually, it's a little bit more nuanced than that because I actually left Locke, where I currently live. And for your listeners who do not know, Locke is one of probably the most important community, Chinese town that still exists in the United States. And the current population is about 80. And if you see any photographs of Main Street Locke, which if you see my book, Bitter Melon, you'll see Main Street Locke. And it looks like a ramshackled old Western town with two-story buildings, wooden and such. So I come from that all the way to Chicago. Chicago was a mind blower, an absolute visual treat in so many ways. But coming back to probably something that has a little bit more relevance for your listeners and actually for me too, because it's really affected my life, was, my sweetie, Max. I just call her Max, but Maximilienne Ewalt, yes. And her involvement with the Sense8 project. And even before the shooting started, the cast, which was there in force in San Francisco, to begin the filming, they had done the table read and such. And Max was invited to Lana and Karen's home as kind of a pre-shoot. And that's when I first met Lana and Lily and Karen and the rest of the Sense8 crew and actors. And the thing that struck me almost straight away from the moment I was at the threshold of the door was the inclusiveness and love that I received from Lana and Karen, who were there greeting us. And it was an immediate embrace. It was an immediate, we are so happy to have you here. And I'm looking around and, I think there are a few others who have brought their significant others, but I felt kind of in this, this really special group of people. And I'm just, in a sense, a regular human like all your listeners. I'm not an actor. And I'll tell you, having been around Max and been around the other actors in Sense8, it is a craft. It is something they work really, really hard at perfecting, at the whole realm of just their craft, learning making sure they know their lines, placement, how you move, how you do takes, the emotional kinds of states that you have to bring forth to actually so it looks good on the screen.
Right.
And I remember, going over and, I got to read the entire first episode. And one of the things that I was struck with was the brilliance of the writing. And this was before I met, Lana, and had that party experience. But just simply reading the script itself, I was amazed with how well this thing had been written. I had read, Horton Foote, who is one of the great screenwriters. He wrote the screenplay for To Kill a Mockingbird, and also another more contemporary film, one of my favorites of all time, Tender Mercies. And he's done a lot. He's like, and so I have some knowledge about script writing, and this was amazing. The way this moved from the very first setup all the way through, it was just like, wow, this moves. This has emotion. This has movement. This has, just, it draws you right in. And that was the same what I felt when I actually, that kind of drawing in and just excitement of being around the cast and Lana and Lily and Karen. I really thank my sweetie Max, who I want to take a special note right here to let all your listeners know throughout the world. Max has started this mural campaign here in San Francisco, and she has a Kickstarter, I Am a We. And it's an amazing mural that a good friend of hers has put together and has the space, has the design. It's just needing to raise money. They have a goal of 15,000. I think they have a few thousand already, but they need to get more. This is something that the fans can really help out with. Just, whatever you can helps. And if this can happen in San Francisco, this mural idea can be expanded to cities around the world. So a special shout out to Maximilienne Ewalt, my sweetie, who is the driving force behind this mural project, and it's fabulous. So.
Absolutely. We've
Thanks for
donated,
bringing that up, yeah.
but we might donate again. We just all got to keep going back there till we hit that goal, right?
That's right.
Yeah, let's talk about the special screening we had in Chicago and how seeing the episode there impacted you on a personal level.
Well, that's a good question, Zach, because, seeing it was mostly a visual experience. The acoustics in the theater were a little bit wanting, so it was really hard for me to hear the dialogue. So trying to understand the storyline was kind of, I just had to let go of. So it became kind of like a real visual ride, which in a sense was really great because the visuals are so dynamic and so much fun to be a part of. And then the other thing, it wasn't like just sitting in front of your screen at home watching this, but being in a theater of enthusiastic fans who are just thrilled to see the characters. Whenever the character arrives on screen, they're given this huge applause and the hoops and the hollers and yay. And it was infectious to be part of that. It again, and then I keep coming back to the sense of family and connectiveness. The connectiveness between the fans and the cast. I mean, when the cast got up with along with Lana and Karen and the production group, and we're there, you could feel that kind of just warmth and gratitude going both ways. And particularly Karen, particularly Lana, and her humanity and her acknowledging that how her own personal courage to be who she was and work through all the challenges that she has encountered has made her this person that can achieve these remarkable things like Sense8 and like her life, her and the marriage to Karen, the relationship to her fans. It was, for me, incredibly inspiring. So yeah, I came away very moved, affected, and I'm still going off of that energy from that. And then also, I was part of that fortunate one that got onto this bus with all the cast and the crew, and departed from the theater after the screening, and went off to Karen and Lana's home in Chicago. And what a delightful party that was! They are so great to hang out with. every one of them. We had so many wonderful conversations, and just, you know, everybody's so approachable. I mean, you know, Brian and Max, who plays Wolfgang, not my Max, but
So many Maxes in the cast.
yeah, they're so easy to hang out with and just, you know, talk about life with, and it's great. Yeah. Where that was echoed for me was from the very beginning, because my sweetie Max, who has been acting for quite a while and in a variety of different capacities, from voiceovers to commercials to some, you know, TV stuff and such. She was surprised at how, in a sense, friendly and open and non kind of, you know, arrogance that was part of what she got involved with.
Right.
And she came back, I remember, from the very first day when she came back from the table read, of how she came back from the table read, and that she was like, they're so easy to be with.
Mm-hmm. It's just amazing to me. I'm still in awe of the whole, you know, the whole essence that was created through this in every level.
Yeah. It's awesome. So James, when we were in Chicago and we started to meet and talk, and we learned that you see the world, you have a very awesome, unique perspective on life and through imagery, and you are in my opinion, very talented, very gifted photographer. I told Sheila that I thought you were a wizard with the camera, because it's so natural to you. Like, we're all sitting here diddle-daddling with our phones and all of this kind of stuff and try to get the lighting right and all this kind of thing. And you just like stand there for a second and you don't even know that you took a picture, and it's just like this masterpiece.
Yeah,
like, what just happened?
Your camera's like usually at your waist, like you're looking up at us.
It's like this natural extension of you, and we've got to, I've got to know you, and your perspective on life is awesome. And can you give us a little bit about where you started with your artwork and photography, and how that has progressed and changed since Sense8 has been in your life?
For me, I've always been closest to photographing people, in a sense, and how that in my relationship with people, as I said, I like being around people. The magic of the world is something that has always thrilled me. And a camera is this device that somehow lets you into people's lives. And if you're okay with a camera in people's lives, people generally are okay that you're in their life with a camera. And so, I've, like the idea of being like when we were in Chicago with you, just having my camera and just simply, this is my life. These are these people in my life, and I'm going to photograph them. So my evolution as a photographer is now I'm starting to do some different things, and this comes back to one of the questions that you posed earlier on about how I was affected by my experience, and this relates directly to Lana's talk, speech, reaction to the audience there in Chicago. When she talked about the idea of courage, and the idea of that once you start living the life that you know, that's inside you, without fear, and to simply accept yourself, and to acknowledge whoever you are. I took that message to myself and said, in my own words, at this point in my life, I'm 11 years away from being 80. What do I what is it that I want to share with the world? Who am I inside? What, I don't have anything to lose anymore. I don't have to impress anybody. I don't have to, if I never achieve any fame, that's okay. If anything, but what is inside me? And so I've had to, my current series that I'm working on is actually a whole series of somewhat revealing self-portraits that I've set up an environment of myself to essentially go back to Eden, to the myth of Adam and Eve, but I'm taking myself back into it with the help. It's a little weird, but it's true. This mannequin that I got, and trying to come back to this idea of just myself in the beginning of my time, and who am I, and beginning to just see what I can do visually with that idea. And because, in a sense, I'm not afraid anymore. And hearing Lana say you don't have to be afraid anymore, really, even at my age, 69 years old, it's like, wow, that's a powerful message. And I got it. I don't have to, I can be, I accept myself for all of whoever, the difficulties, the problems of who I am. That's okay, because I am me, and I like me. If I can share, that's what, when we're walking around Chicago, in a sense, that's what I'm sharing with everything that I'm coming into contact with. It's just not people, but it's also the buildings themselves, the architecture, the trains, and just the visuals of everything. And then of course people. Oh my God, how many amazing people did we come across in Chicago? And that's so true of like the world. It's like I feel like I'm constantly traveling now with the eyes of a traveler who's left their, in a sense, their little village or town or whatever, and has gone off onto this journey of things that are really different. And for me, it's exciting and wonderful to view the world this way. And, it's kind of like, the kind of coming back to Sense8 and the collectiveness and the sharedness that is exemplified with the characters and with the storyline of how they share each other's strengths. In a sense, if I can have that kind of multifaceted view of the world, what a better life that I get to live, just like each of the characters get to have a better life because of their connectiveness with all their others.
Yes, absolutely makes sense. I just want to say thank you very much for sharing all of that. Being inspired by Lana, even at a man of your age, right? Just like, holy cow, that's awesome for everybody, including myself, to just say, oh, you know what, Lana really is affecting people, and you're on here because we know you live the Sense8 life the best you can, just like, and that's what we want. That's why I'm glad you shared all of that stuff with us, because you're out there doing it, and that's what our message is all about, and that's what's important, and is a really great example to just, another permission slip for everybody. Oh, if James is doing it, so can I. If Lana's doing it, so can I. And that's kind of the thing. That's what's going to set everybody free to be the most authentic self they can be, in my opinion. The more we observe each other doing these things. So sharing all that wisdom, like having the eyes to be able to cultivate, having the eyes of a traveler wherever you go, and being open to life and what you receive in all its forms. Like it was very contagious.
Yeah,
to be
that's
with
what
you.
I was going to say. Like you shared that with us. So
Right.
you share the eyes of the people, and then we shared with you and took that wonder. I mean, the wonder that you invoke in yourself and all the people around you is contagious. And it did feel like another Sense8 experience to be able to share that, and then to be able to, even when you're across the country, to be able to say, oh yeah, let me look with James's eyes today. you
Right.
know?
I don't, it's amazing to be alive, and it is such a delight. Even in this time of when there, the state of this country, the state of my fellow citizens in America, as well as my fellow world people, this to me is a very conflicted time, and to be really not overwhelmed with the negativity and the hatefulness and the mean-spiritedness that seems to have a louder and louder voice, and to know that there is a balance to that meanness, and that is when we can share love and understanding between each other. And those, it just begins with even though, I am a we, it has to begin with an I to become a we.
Right.
And
Yep.
You have to, for me, it's just, I need to be me and appreciate me. And by doing that, of course, it gives me the privilege to be able to experience other people's uniqueness. And it doesn't have to be overly obvious. I mean, just walking down the street, you see amazing faces and amazing things that are going on, of how people are navigating. All of us humans, I like to say, who are trying to figure out how to navigate in this world. And it's really interesting, and it's thrilling. Well, just the magic of walking down the street
Right.
for me.
Yeah,
Seeing-
for me,
yeah.
just being open and seeing people. So I don't know if you recall this moment, but just being open to people. We were standing in Millennium Park, and it was time for a bathroom break and maybe some water. And so we're kind of just standing out there because the ladies' restroom lines in Chicago are huge. I mean, they're everywhere, but I mean, there's so many people, so it's just long lines. And we're chilling outside, and there's this guy, man. I was like, this guy, he is a very charismatic person, and he's just walking everybody is just kind of doing their own thing, and he's got this walk, and he's just walking in a nice slow pace, and he's got a giant smile on him, and he starts flirting and dancing with these ladies and stuff. And I'm just looking at this guy, soaking him up, and he's having a great time because he's just smiling and starts dancing with strangers, And then he walks up to me, and I look him in the eyes, and he looks me in the eyes, and we just smile, and we just hug. And that was one of the experiences I had with a stranger in Chicago, because I was open to people and him. I'm not saying this happens all the time, but there is very positive experiences, because I think underneath the cultural atmosphere and story, I think underneath all of that, I believe that human beings really don't want that. I believe that we do want to be open. We do want to be connected with each other. It's just we have to consciously open up and just be that way ourselves, because if we don't open up to those experiences, there's no potential for us to have them.
I agree totally, Zach. And I remember I was watching all that right there, when everything you described, and I too watched that guy. It was amazing.
It was awesome.
And his fullness and his sense of self, and coming over to those women, and just, and the woman was like, wow, this is great. And she starts dancing with him, and then you're so I understand completely.
And you know what, with the story and what you were saying earlier, I think it is such an important point that you made about I am also a we, means that it starts with an I, that if we are a we, which we are, then there's a responsibility to also make ourselves the best I that we can be, because that's what's contributing to the we. So if we take the metaphor of the cluster sharing and even look through the series as it evolves, each of those individuals within the cluster are becoming more of who they are, more authentic, more altruistic and true to themselves. And as they do, they're able to contribute more to the cluster. And that same aspect goes to us. And then the we shares back to us and makes us more able to be even more of ourselves. So like you showed up very much a part of yourself. You shared that with us and the people around you. You have that experience. And then you go back home and your art takes another level because you've changed from that experience. And it's just a beautiful synergy that we're moving through in this dance of life.
Oh, well said, Sheila. Very well said. And yeah, the core question is always saying, what is the best me, and how does one find that? And it seems like my path has taken me many years, in a sense, to really, come to the full understanding of who is the best me, mm-hmm. and to really to embrace that. And that's what, again, I come back to what Lana was saying, was the acceptance of who you are, all of the aspects of who you are, but accepting, for me, accepting myself has really freed me up from trying to prove things to other people, trying to be something that, I may have had pieces of, but it really wasn't the real me. And by accepting that maybe I'm never going to be any of that, so why should I even try to even prove to somebody that I am something like that? But just to really emphasize what is my core and who I am, and in a sense, embrace myself and run with it, so to speak, is absolutely delightful. Does that make sense?
It does. And I just got to thank you again for sharing that, because I know there's so many people out there, as we're on the cusp of new conscious understandings of ourselves in this dichotomy, this polarity of our cultural, economical, political situation. And at the same time, we're just in there trying to be that greatest self that we can be. And you sharing that is awesome. So I really have to thank you a lot for expressing that for everybody to listen to, as you are an example as well. And you are a very gifted photographer. And I want to know how you use photography to celebrate life's diversity.
Well, I'm going to kind of expand on a little bit, because I've been thinking about this a fair amount. I remember hearing Lana give a talk to a group about how that transgender people are in a very unique position in the world, and that they don't fall into into what we consider the recognized groups of people, men, women, gay, straight, or whatever. And so the idea for me is that now that there are so many, in a sense, it's no longer the idea that women and sovereignty. I think this was a question that I remember we had talked about, women having sovereignty over their bodies and what it means to me. And I've been thinking a lot about that, because it's the idea of bodies. It's not the defining an idea of that a male body or a female body has sovereignty. They all should. So I've decided to really start looking at it as more the equality, you know what I'm trying to say, equality of bodies. In other words, all bodies. It doesn't matter if you identify or that you feel that, your body, however it is, has just as much equality as my body. So if we have a place of where all bodies have equal value, so it isn't, because for me, long ago, I kind of had a marker for me of when civilization, in a sense, had moved the step forward from, in a sense, our barbaric ways. And for me, that defining moment would be when women, all women, throughout the world, just not in one country, but throughout the world, can have the same control over their bodies as men do. But that led me to the thought of, well, what happens if you identify as, in a sense, maybe both male and female, or, that you started off as one. And so it led me into this progression of realizing that really it isn't just simply women having control on the equality of their bodies, but how about everybody should have that same equality, however they want to decide who and what their body is. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
It's interesting because as you were talking, I started to think about the whole, Black Lives Matter, all lives matter, and both are true, but it doesn't negate the other. Like right now, half the population of the world, in a way, in most cultures, don't have legal rights over their body just by being female. And I think that's absolutely true. And it does go beyond that in the sense that who gets to define what you are. And then we've got the bathroom issue and all these bizarre things that go even beyond the women having sovereignty over their own body. And I thought about that with the Black Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter and All Lives Matter. And it's that remembering that moving into a state where you remember that the fullness is when we all reach this point doesn't negate the steps that lead us there, in which we have to support people in reaching that. But I think it is it was interesting because when you first said that to us, we were on the deck having coffee, and we got into into politics a bit. And just as an aside, I kind of flashed to, wow, this is kind of like when Grace and Amanita and Nomi and the dads are all having coffee and talking politics on the deck in Sense8. But so it was a surreal moment. But you said that then. You asked us what our marker point was, and I don't know that we had one, but you were very clear that would be the marker point for you, which is beautiful and brilliant. And yet I think you're right that then it keeps going, right? I think when we're all sovereign, that's...
Yeah, I would agree that it's a good marker point because, we just talked about this. In order for us to be the best we can be, we have to be the best I.
And in order to be the best I, we have to be free.
Right. And we have to be allowed, for our bodies, as long as we're not harming other people, to be who we are. Because, I think Lana is a beautiful example of trusting herself and then being courageous and following through because of, I can't even imagine the trials and tribulations that she's been through to get to where she's at, to make the art that she does today. But the culture of humanity really needs to to me, it's just the basic understanding of life and the potential of humanity is, in order for us to all succeed in being the best we possibly can be for the collective, for the whole, for the race of humanity, we have to be the best individual. And in order for that, we have to recognize that we need to let other people be the best individuals they can be, so we can actually start to move in that direction. So I agree with you, James.
Thanks, Zach. Thanks. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I mean, if you just, look at it, what the amount of potential that in a sense men are denying themselves, and the harm that we as men are doing to ourselves by denying 50% of the population their true potential. How idiotic is that? I mean, just think about how much better, how many more amazing things, what just on so many different levels, the world would be so much better. My life as a man, my son's life would be better as a man if if the other half of the population, meaning women in this case in that definition, having to be able to know that whatever their potential was available to them to be able to explore, to be able to produce, to be able to have. And that's like with Lana, using her cinematographic arts and her ability to tell a story. And this amazing story of Sense8, wrapping all of those kinds of humanistic things that she talks about, and putting them into these 8 individuals who are now collectively sharing their worldliness, their lives with, and their talents with. Just like they become stronger, we would become stronger as men if we would sit there and say, right on, keep going. You're the best to all women, whoever. And then, of course, as I moved on to all people, without the kind of definition, even though this is a huge struggle, this is going to take years of struggling, and for Black America to finally have an equal place with all, all people of all color. How amazing that's going to be. It's going to take years of struggle to move that forward, because we have been so stupid
Amen.
and self-defeating in the past. I mean, just think of the potential to humanity, that if every single baby who was born had essentially the opportunity to go forth in life with all the potential that life has inherently to it. How many Einsteins, how many Michelangelos, throughout history of how many remarkable individuals have come from limiting people. How many remarkable people can come from when we don't limit people?
Yes.
I know. What an incredible world we will have when that's happening, because I believe it will happen.
Well, you see that in Sense8. That's my point of reaching this back. You see what they're able to accomplish, just with each other, and how their lives are, to overcome this huge adversity that they're faced with collectively and equally. And there is no, well, I'm a man, so I can do this better than you can because you're a woman. Well, Sung Duna Bay is like she is so great and amazing, and yet you would look at her in your standard, typical way of looking at a person, go, that person can't do nothing, Oh yeah, watch them.
Man, this subject is so big. Could talk about it for so long. When you talk about understanding human potential and what's going on with a human being, in America, we're sent off to these public schools that teach us how to show up for a job, right? And how to do math and remember things. And they don't really touch upon what it means to actually be a human being. Like our education system doesn't even focus first on, hey, little Johnny, little Susie, this is actually what it means to be a human being. And here's how you handle your emotions and do all these other things and belief systems. And we don't start there first. So we have that aspect. And then to understand that human beings, within all of us, we have male and female energy that we have to balance within us. So it's not really about one thing or another, right? So we have this aspect of how much feminine, how much masculinity is right for the particular individual, and they have to figure that out. But having who's giving our youth these concepts, right? And then on top of that, it's about what do we value as human beings? And I think, to me, the biggest issue is value. What we value, we think things, we put a price tag on so many things, and what things are valuable and what aren't. And so one of the things that I see degrading a little bit in America is the family unit.
The distance that we have that still appears between where we are and where we want to be may seem as long as the distance from where we came from to where we are now. But because of the momentum picking up like an avalanche, the rapidness of which we can get there, I believe and hope, with each generation will just accelerate.
So I graduated high school in 1967. It was the summer of love. It was truly a time of love for my generation and the possibilities that we all felt. And imagine that my generation would have had social networks and the possibility of instantly communicating across, in this case, across the entire country or across the entire world at that time. What a difference that would have made for my generation moving forward. Because later on, it just seemed like we were more and more isolated. There wasn't any sense of how to combine us, and we became fractured. And, that's where I see something different happening now. I mean, I see it in my own children, who are, soon, my daughter will be soon 30 in a year or so, and my son is, rapidly getting there as well. So, but their generation's quite different, as well as every time I go to San Francisco or, any metropolis or anywhere, young people, how amazingly thrilling and exciting and different they are about so many of these things that acted to divide us. This idea of that, in a sense, it's again coming back to Sense8, that how collective they are. This idea that you're separated by genders, no big deal. Or that you want to love somebody that is as your same gender, no big deal. Oh, you come from this sort of social economic background. Oh, and I come from this, no big deal. I mean, I see that in so many different aspects with this current generation, and meaning not only the kids who are in their 20s now, but also in the kids who are rising before them. And for me, they give me hope.
Me too.
Me too.
And the directions and their sensitivities have, in so many ways, evolved and are much more compassionate and much more humanistic than the meaningfulness and the rigidity that my generation seems to have locked itself into, and to somehow have forgotten that time of 1967, of when we had such a spirit of optimism and love and thrill about being out there. And of course, that was highly exclusionary. I mean, we were, gays, men, loving men, back in that time was not something you really even saw, you talked about, you experienced, or anything. But what a difference that is now to where, that's available. And I there was one other thing I really wanted to mention, and that for myself, that I have to work with my own sense of judgments, whether they be on viewing people by body size, or I have to work every single day with my own internal judgments, and it's relatively easy to work with them because but they're still there. I mean, I judge people unfairly for terrible reasons, and that's just part of being human. You to me, it's not something you ignore, and it's not something you make yourself feel bad. No, you understand that's part of for me of who I am. But you know what? I'm better than all those judgments because I choose to do something that's not in that negative, judgmental form. I'll do something in a positive way. And that's how, that I choose. And it's the act of choosing, because it's those choices are thrown at me every single day in a variety of ways. And I actively will choose a more positive way. But it's an active choice. It's not you just simply magically pass through some sort of barrier and you never have negative, judgmental, terrible thoughts about other people of the human race. No, you work through them. You decide, no, I'm not going to be supportive of that, and I'm not going to, I'm going to do something different. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, James, you mentioned your generation kind of forgot what it was to be in that summer of love. Do you see any way to have maybe prevent that from happening? I know it kind of happens to all of us, but do you have any advice for us and the listeners and young people out there who are kind of, they have that youthfulness and they see potential in life and they have all the youthful energy to see those things happen? Do you have any recommendations for us not to get locked in or forget that summer of love, so to speak, metaphorically, so we don't become that rigid when we're a little bit older?
Sure. First of all, social media allows you something that I didn't have, because it was that isolation, in a sense, your own isolation that you put yourself in, your own job, your own way of doing things, and if you know that other people are feeling the same as you do now, that I see it on social media, for good or for bad, it's being used as all things, in good ways and bad ways. But to share with each other that I see that of giving your heart, of sharing your wisdom with joy that you see, sharing in others with their joy. In other words, be a participant in their joy of when they have something. This is just my own personal life lessons that I've learned. And that for many years, I spent a lot of time in self-pity and self-doubt, in knowing that if I could have somehow been able to wrestle with those a little bit earlier and to find a belief in myself, it would have been better. But my journey took me to be into my 60s before I was able really to love myself. And it's a simple thing. We said it way back in the 60s and such. You gotta love yourself, love others. And that power of love, and how you, speaking to the listener now, to how you can find that in yourself and to be yourself, and by being yourself, to share that honestly with others. Approach them the same way that you're approaching yourself, with that love, and know that they're struggling with their own judgments and their own difficulties, and to be compassionate with them and to be supportive of them, just as you want them to be compassionate and supportive of you.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with all of us.
As you were speaking, and yes, that was beautifully said, I started thinking of your art, your photography, and flashing images that I've seen that you've shared with us. We're going to include several of your photographs in the write-up on the website. So everyone listening, if you didn't come in through the main website of livesense8.com, be sure to go there so that you see his images. But James, can you share a little bit about your images and how that reflects what you just said? I'm not even sure you're ready to share some of your newer images, but those are some of the ones that are flashing in my mind as you speak of that self-love and that process that you're in right now with the new photography. And then like both aspects of what you said, because with some of your older work, there's also some reflection of the love that you see and the compassion that you see in others when you take their picture, or even if you include some of the pictures of us on our trip, it's what you're seeing through loving eyes and sharing in community. So is there anything that you can say specifically? And I don't know if we've chosen the images yet, but if some of the images pop to your head that you can kind of talk to us about for a moment?
Sure. Well, they're kind of, they're kind of two broad areas for me. The one is before, meaning essentially in the 1970s and early 80s, my black and white, essentially broadly put environmental portraiture. And there's a sense of, for me, humanity and love of people. I mean, I would hope that, I'll try to put some up of Hispanic youth in San Francisco in the Mission area, as well as some of my workers' series. Unfortunately, I have limited images to be able to offer to the world because a number of years ago, all my negatives were destroyed.
Oh.
So I only have prints of my 70s, and so whatever I have, there are a lot of other negatives that I would love to be able to share. But so, yeah, I would hope when people look at that, just to look at them, there's some wonderful images of people that I think are, just great to look at, and just enjoy to look at them as humanity and just people that I've come across, in a sense, and lives that I've been able to share. And then the other is the now photographs, essentially beginning 2010-ish, 2012-ish, and those type of images of where I construct an environment and I photograph it. Even going back to the black and white days, my photographs are full frame. There's no cropping. Everything, in other words, everything happens in that moment inside that camera. Very little is, I was a pretty good darkroom technician and produced some pretty good prints. But now in this modern era with Photoshop and such, pretty much all of my constructions that I photograph are straight out of the camera with very little, there's maybe a little saturation, maybe a little contrast, a little of that, but there's no, using none of the elaborate tools that Photoshop or Lightroom gives you. I don't do anything. I just really like photographing, constructing an environment, and then photographing it, which is a little bit different. There's a lot of, messages for me of things that I was wrestling with about sex, religion, beauty, the kind of sense of how we get manipulated by things, how money plays into people's lives. And I've been able to kind of construct these environments and put together elements that I then photograph that become representational for me of certain kinds of, stuff that means stuff to me, but oftentimes I just tell other people or other viewers, people who are looking at my images, make up your own story. This is, I just want it to be visually something you look at and you go in and go, that's really interesting, but what's going on? And in a sense, a black and white photograph, my portraitures are pretty much easy reads. In other words, you look at them and it's like you get it, and then you also know that there's something, the emotional context. The idea of having a head, heart, and hand, meaning your head is kind of the idea of the photograph. Your heart is the emotional impact that image has in it. And then, of course, your hand is, are you able, the mechanics, and all of those should integrate themselves seamlessly so that in other words, the technique, you're not kind of going, God, I can't look at that because it has splotches all over it or whatever, or the composition is goofy or something, and, but then it has to have an emotional impact. It has to have something that grabs you, and, people, faces, and how many, how people go through the human life experience is visually, very interesting for me. And so, so all those components have to work together. So my newer work is, for me, it's because they're constructions, in a sense, it's just like, I don't want it to be quite such an easy read. I want it to, there's a multitude of depths and things that are going on, and that I want to have somebody to be intrigued with. It's kind of like, one of my, an old favorite painter was Rousseau, and his construction of these jungle scenes with all these things going on in them, and this human figure in them, and or say like the same with Gauguin and such, or there's just all this kind of stuff you want to look at and peer into and to keep peering. I guess it's that keep peering into and revealing that I'm kind of going in that direction. So yes,
well, you got there.
Yeah,
you got
sure.
there. You definitely, they're intriguing, and they draw you in, and they make you think. Just everybody, when you look at these, just remember he said they're not Photoshopped. Like, that's another piece of the mechanical side of the art that's incredible, because they definitely look like they were created on a computer in a lot of ways, and yet you created those all through tangible art. It's
cool.
Very cool. Very cool.
Now, James,
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Do you want to go ahead and give a quick summary of your book, Bitter Melon, and where our audience members can pick it up?
Sure. Bitter Melon was a series of my imagery of my neighbors that I lived with here in the town of Locke, the 1970s, and I came back in the 1980s, and with my co-author, Jeff Gillenkirk, we did a series of oral histories. So it's a combination of their stories of how they came to be here in America, and the struggles and the successes that they were able to persevere and to accomplish. There's also an historical overview written by Su-Chung Chan, who started the Asian Studies departments in the California University system. So you get a real anchor of why the Chinese came to the Sacramento Delta, what their importance is in the history of California, and the importance of the Chinese experience in America, which is phenomenal. PBS just had a series, I think their Civilization series, and it was about the Chinese Exclusion Act, the 1882 Chinese Exclusion Act, and how that was barred specifically Chinese from coming into America as well as being citizens of America. And so Locke is kind of the history of that, and it's a fascinating book. It was published originally by the University of Washington in 1987. It won the California Commonwealth Award for Best California History for that year. It was reviewed in the New York Times and the New Yorker very favorably, and it's still in continuous print, and there'll be a link, and you can write me directly. Jeff and I took over publishing, the physical publishing and distributing the book now after the University of Washington and Heyday, which we really want to thank for their involvement with the book. So write me directly and
Excellent. And we'll have that on the write-up as well.
right.
James, my brother, thank
My
you
brother.
so much for coming and talking with us about how you got welcomed into the Sense8 family. Thank you for being open and honest with us in your life and how you strive to live the Sense8 way through your eyes every day, and sharing your photography and your wisdom with us. As you know, you're an older man and you have seen some things that us younger people haven't seen, and you were able to give us some wise words of wisdom to not make the same mistakes your generation did. So I really appreciate that.
Yes.
You're very welcome, Zach. Sheila, I love you both. As I said, you're just amazing individuals and humans, and you've enriched my life knowing you.
Thanks, James.
Yes. Ditto. Love you so much, and love Maximilienne, and thank you for being here. And do you want to be an...
Yes. Yes. I want to say one more time, support the mural project that Max is doing. I am a we. We are stronger being together. So support that mural project. It's great.
And that's on Kickstarter. If you search I Am Also We on Kickstarter. Of course, we will also have it on our Patreon and on our website for you to look at. So, and donate to and share. Thank you. Thank you, James.
Thank you. I'll do that's the clapping.
Everybody's at home clapping, right? In their car, they're clapping. Everybody's clapping.
And a big thank you to James Motlow for joining us on the Live Sense8 podcast today. Thank you very much for spending your time with us and listening. I hope you enjoyed James's wisdom that he shared. I sure did. And a big thank you to our editor of the podcast, Sarah Applegate. If you want to get in touch with us, head over to the Twitter. Our handle is @live_sense8. You can send us an email at team@livesense8.com. Please consider supporting the show. Every dollar, every little bit helps out. We have some excellent perks over there on Patreon, and which includes extended conversations. We have classes. You can get a spiritual reading with Sheila Applegate. You can also get sponsored and have a little sponsorship section on our show to promote your business or project. So please head over to patreon.com/livesense8 to do that. And also just a reminder, if when you go over to iTunes or whatever platform you're on, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, etc., if you give us a 5-star rating and a review, that would be most excellent and most helpful. And thank you again for all you do on social media, sharing with your friends. Until next time, stay connected.